Hi, and welcome to Local Legends. My name is Tony Wade, and I am your host. Our guest today is an internationally known singer, songwriter, saxophonist, guitarist, producer, and he was in a little band you may have heard of called Huey Lewis and the News. He's also the pride of Suisun City and Fairfield. It is Johnny Colla. Johnny, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Tony. I like the order in which you put the two cities, Suisun City first.
Yes, of course.
So thanks.
That was for you.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I'm old school, but we're going to start with the new. So tell us what you've been up to. I know you have a new CD, correct?
Yeah, it's called I Hear Other Voices, and sort of a takeoff on a release I did in 2012. I kind of had this idea in my back pocket forever to do a more pure a cappella version of this record I put out. I wasn't entirely happy with. So when COVID hit and my fearless leader, Huey Lewis, developed hearing issues, took us off the road for, well, it's coming on 4 years. I found I kind of had more time on my hands, but you know how that cup is. The more free time you have, the more full it gets. So I got it done, and I slammed it out here in about 4 months, and I don't know, I kind of like it myself. So.
Yeah, I love the original one you did, and what I've seen in the one that you have now, it's hardly strictly a cappella. So there is a difference, and I think the thing that jumped out at me was how on this one you have more of that street corner doo-wop thing, you know, and I love the in the studio, live in the studio, things like you added a lot of or left in a lot of the chatter like right before a song or something. Was that that's something you thought about doing in this one?
Absolutely. It's the record I really wanted to make back in 2012. But the Huey and the News thing kept me busy. I got to wear yet another hat and become a co-producer on 2 or 3 of our last records. So that was an offer I couldn't refuse. So this went to the back burner. And in fact, you mentioned Take 6 or what have you, something like that. I actually plan on putting out a version of this that is purely a cappella.
Oh, okay.
Just take everything else. Oh. And that's for the crazy little audiophile that just needs something in their hand to add to this, call it a trio of this particular batch of songs. So.
Right, and you had a special guest on that album too. Tell me about that.
Oh, a little gal named Gabriella Wilson.
That's the one.
Her name, from Vallejo, California. Right. I have a home studio, and it was actually a blast because her father and mother and little sister, the whole darn family came over, and I gave them soda pop and a little something to chew on while Gabby and I went downstairs and cut her vocal, and God, she just knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely.
That was probably 2011, I would say, and I knew the world had a tiger by the tail, and the rest of the world was going to hear about this girl. Sometimes you just know this stuff, and she was no exception. She was amazing. A lot like when I got together with Huey. I really had the feeling from our first 6 months together that we had something and it was going to go. I didn't know it was going to go for 40 years, but you know, if we got 3 records out of it, I would have been happy. So it was a pleasure to work with her.
Right. And now you mentioned Huey, so let's do like you heard that song Troglodyte. We're gonna go way back in time. Is what we're gonna do. Okay. So let's talk about Suisun City. And I should mention on your website on johnnycolla.com there is a wonderful. It's called one of the tabs is a photographic journey. It goes through your life history of your music and your life, and it isn't just photographs too. A lot of text and there's a lot of insights in there. So I definitely recommend going and checking that out. We're not going to go hit every single one of those, but we are going to do a flyover about that. And so, but it's really great. So, but the first picture on there is of you sitting at a piano at the house in Suisun City. And that piano at one time it belonged to Daniel Root II.
That's right.
So tell us about that. Is that your earliest remembrance of music?
Our family came back to Suisun City. We moved back, and I think Mr. Root gave my dad a sweetheart deal on the house. And Guido felt that because he worked for the Crystal Union School District, he felt he needed to live in that school district and be a part of it. And I think he was closer to his mom.
Oh, right.
And I could walk to Grandma's house, let's face it, and to school. I guess the house was part of the deal. For another $500, you could have the piano, or was it 4, or was it 3? And you couldn't join the grammar school band until you were in the 4th grade. And so I qualified. I was itching to get in the grammar school band, and I couldn't until I think I came over in the 2nd grade, and I got advanced a year. So all of a sudden, it's only 1 year later, and now I'm in 4th grade, albeit 1 year younger than all of my fellow students. And I got to be in the Crystal Grammar School band. That was really the beginning.
You got advanced a year. See, I didn't think I knew that.
Yeah, I did.
Because it kind of goes, we'll get to that later about the 5 years thing. We'll get to that later. So you're in the band, and what was your influences around? Did you guys get into the Beatles and all that kind of stuff at that time? Or what was the thing that kind of wanted you to be to join local bands?
This was pre-Beatles, Crystal School.
Oh, okay.
My influences, my devil influences at the time were my uncle's country music, and he was a caller for square dancing. And then I had this cousin, Mike Perry, who was wearing collarless jackets even before the Beatles, playing me James Brown and turned me on to soul music. So I got the uncle giving me country and the cousin giving me soul music, and those were really huge influences on me when I was a kid. You know, he's 3 or 4 years older, and he's got pomade in his hair, and I just stared at him like a puppy, you know. My cousin Mike.
And so in the school, you got your musical education there with learning the basics and that kind of thing. But so when did you start to play with other musicians locally?
Let's go back to the piano in the house. I wanted piano lessons, and so my folks, they did everything they possibly could. Anything I wanted musically, they gave to me. I'm sure they sensed I had a certain ability early on with music, and I took to piano lessons quickly. And then I went to high school, and I met this buddy of mine. We almost ended up in a fist fight the same day we met. But as it turns out, I went to his house, and I think we started a band. If it wasn't that very day, it was certainly that week. And I was going to be the bass player because I liked Paul McCartney, and he was going to be the guitar player. And that was the beginning of the Furlanders.
The Furlanders.
Yeah.
Where'd that name come from?
There it is. Is that a beauty?
Yes.
That can mean anything you want. That could be from somewhere up in Iceland, let's face it. It means absolutely nothing. My friend Robert Cohen just liked the way the name sounded, and we went with it.
And you said the only thing that exists from that is the business card? You said, is that correct?
Yes.
You still have the business card. You have everything you ever had. I know that you pretty much collect everything.
It's unhealthy, but yes, I do. It's actually starting to pay off here later on in life. You know, as I dig through this and organize my life, you start sort of giving this stuff back to people and farming it out here and there.
So from the Furlanders, what was the band after that?
The U.S. Army.
U.S. Army.
Now we're halfway through high school, let's say, Army High School.
And how do you spell the U.S. Army?
Y-E-W-E-S-S.
Because I saw that before, and I didn't know how to pronounce it. I just one of those things you read, and I didn't. So I was like, oh, it's saying U.S. I get it. So, and where'd that come from?
Well, I got to tip my hat to our lead singer at the time, Carrie Schultz, who was much older and wiser than us by 2 years.
Back then, though, that's
a big deal. And somehow he read a lot, and he wrote lyrics. First time I'm in a band, we're writing our own songs, which was a big deal. And Carrie really was the catalyst for that. I don't know, the U.S. Army goes back somewhere to World War I or II, and it was somebody thumbing their nose somewhere about the Army and what it did to people. So we went with that one too, or I certainly did.
And you did originals, you said?
Yeah, we were writing original songs. We were coming up with arrangements, songs that were on the radio. That was kind of a big deal at 15 or 16 years old, to be using our imagination in that capacity. And I mean, I'd like to say although I didn't write the songs, I had a big hand already then in arranging them and sort of the guy behind the curtain. And we had We had a pretty cool band. I think between the arrangements and the original songs, it cost us lots of Battle of the Bands. Because other bands like Project Soul were just killing it, you know.
Right.
playing covers, they were putting us to shame.
All right, so we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back with more from Johnny Colla.
Hey neighbor, what are you doing?
Has this light always been broken like this?
I hadn't noticed. We should report it to get it fixed.
Report it? How do we do that?
With the My Fairfield CA app.
App?
Yeah, you just click on the issue you're experiencing, fill out the information, and it sends a report.
So it's the My Fairfield.
CA app. Here. Actually, I have a card. You should have it.
Thanks.
Get the My Fairfield CA app. Pass it on.
Welcome back. It's more with Johnny Colla. After you had done some gigs with the U.S. Army, then it was Cottonmouth. Is that correct? The next band? Tell me about Cottonmouth. What were they like?
Sure. Well, the U.S. Army had the biggest gig of their career. Our guitar player and I went to the Avalon Ballroom and saw Mike Bloomfield's Electric Flag. And right then and there, we decided, between tears and hugs, we decided we were going to put a horn section in the U.S. Army. And that effectively broke up the band that summer. So that was the end of that. And on we went, graduated. My friends graduated from high school, and you know my standing joke. High school was the best 5 years of my life.
Right.
So I attended an extra semester there and went right on to Solano College, where I met a whole new group of musicians. I'm sorry, went to Vallejo Junior College.
Right.
And that introduced me to the talent pool, Solano County rock music talent pool that I had otherwise not known about. These bands called the Four Way Stop and Project Soul and what would become Confunction. And I joined Cottonmouth, which were the guys a little older than me here in Fairfield Suisun, and now I'm getting to play with them. So it didn't last long. Wives and babies came along, but it was a good learning experience for me. Put another horn section together, and I'm a sponge for taking it all in. I wanted to be in a popular rock band, and I was starting to wear it out here a little in Solano County, musician-wise.
And we almost had a Cottonmouth reunion about 5 years ago for the Army of Rocks thing. It was close.
Very close.
Yeah.
I just ran out of, once again, I ran out of time.
Right.
Time, it becomes more precious. But I had a turning point. I was at this crossroads. I quit school, and I'm working at the only place, one of only two places in Fairfield Suisun that would hire somebody with hair that came over their ears, and we had the band going, and the draft was calling me up, and I just had this real crossroads in my life. I met a gal from L.A., and she's going to go to school up here. I introduced her to my favorite band in the world called the Sons of Champlin. And the first night I took her to go see the Sons of Champlin, this opening act called Soundhole was playing, and I thought they were the coolest thing in the world. And the band came off stage. I went right up to the drummer. I said, "Man, you guys are really good for your age."
And they were taking off, Soundhole, right? They were digging all over the place.
We were doing really well. We became the Sons of Chaplin's sort of little brothers. They were taking us up to the Northwest. At one point in time, Van Morrison took a shine to us. We had a certain R&B bent to us. And Van picked us up for, 3, 4, 5 months. Took us out on the road, and my God, that was cutting road teeth right there. That was the first time I had to pack a suitcase and get on an airplane, and I'm playing with who was notoriously one of the snarkiest guys in the business. And it's just a great learning experience. It's unbelievable.
So tell me about Soundhole, because one of the things in the photographic journey is there's a picture of you guys, and you describe how there was a real difference of musical direction, which is shown in the fashions of the people in the band. You know, you see one guy is like in the disco, some guys wearing like this fur coat they got from his girlfriend or something, you know, and it's like, you can kind of see that it wasn't gonna go. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you mix all it together and it can work, I guess. But in this case, it didn't.
If you're singing the same song, 4 lead singers. We got a drummer singing James Brown tunes, and there's a push and pull between the lead guitarist and our keyboard player, who's a soulful R&B guy with a voice to match. His favorite artist in the whole world was Ray Charles, while the guitar player's leaning toward David Bowie, and so you kind of think this isn't going to work. And ultimately, the keyboard player and myself got unceremoniously fired from the group because Soundhole, the core of the band, wanted to be more of a rock band. And okay, fine, pay us and we'll go away, one of those things. Well, I was dragging my tail, there's no doubt about it. I was feeling pretty bad about it. As a matter of fact, we got fired right here in Fairfield, California, out by the base at Bozo's bus stop.
Bozo's bus stop, right.
So, at insult to injury, my keyboard buddy, John Foray, a month and a half later, gets a gig playing with Sly Stone, who's living up in Northern California, in Novato. And now I'm going, God, here I am. I'm the only guy out, and I'm doing anything and everything I can to keep myself busy and happy. And one day John stops by and he says, hey, I think the trumpet player's quitting or he's getting fired. So here I go, replacing another trumpet player. And John told Sly all about me. And I get the call. That's the old days, you had to dial the number up or push the buttons. And he says, hey, he wants you to come up. So I go up to the house and we sit around and talk for probably 5 or 6 hours. And we talked about everything. We talked about Vallejo and Sly coming up and KSOL and Golden State Recorders and my band's, 10 years later than him and going through the Solano County music scene. And at the end of the night, he'd never even heard me play. He said, John Colla, you're in the group, man.
Wait, he hadn't heard you play.
Nope.
See, I did not know that. Oh, that's awesome.
Sly shot from the hip. If he had a horn line or something he wanted somebody to do, he'd just kind of get in your face and go, this thing. Same with the drums or whatever it was. So when it came time to put this band together, which was the second, I guess it was the reincarnation of Sly and the Family Stone, the second version, he didn't know any of the horn lines. There were no horn charts. And he brought me up one night about 9 o'clock, because that's usually when he woke up. And he sat me in front of a pile of tapes this big, and he said, figure out the horn parts, chart all the horn parts. And finally about one or two, and he gave me a list of songs and come in and check on me. And okay, so this. And finally about 1 or 2 in the morning, I think I pretty much have it nailed and I have all I need. And you got to remember that this was a climate of the times. There was a lot of funny business going on back then. So I said, I've had enough. I got to go home, I'm walking down the stairwell. It's the stairway, a big mansion there in the hills of Novato. And I said, all right. And he said, well, thanks, man. And he said, oh, wait a minute. I said, what? And he says, turn around. I said, okay. I don't know what. Am I going to get shot? Pat on the back. And he frisks me. Sly pats me down, and he says, okay, man, you're cool. So I guess that was the second time I was in the band. He was seeing if I was stealing any tapes. It's like I had passed some sort of test.
All right, so we're going to get into Clover and Huey Lewis in the news. We'll have more with Johnny Colla. Join us then.
What is city planning? It's when government officials, business leaders, and community members come together to create neighborhoods that enrich the lives of residents and businesses. Good city planning ensures not only housing choices and safe communities, but also a city that represents our values. Help us plan the future for Fairfield by getting involved with the general plan update. Go to fairfieldfora.com for more information.
And we're back with more local legends with Johnny Colla. So we talked about when you're with Sly and the Family Stone. So what happened next?
Well, my biggest fan and friend, strangely enough, we had parallel lives, let's say, Hugh Craig. We both owned MGs. We both had girlfriends going to Sonoma State College, and we had rival rock bands in Marin County. As things would have it, for some reason, we had this mutual admiration club. And I'd go to Huey's band's gig, I'd go to Clover's gigs, and he'd show up at Soundhole gigs. And afterwards, we'd go have a pint and hang around. We were slumming around together, you know. We didn't have two nickels to rub together. And when I got booted out of Soundhole, Huey was the first guy to come to my rescue and say, hey, man, come and jam with our band, you know? So there's a wonderful shot, as you mentioned, in that photographic journey that I put together that shows the Sly Stone horn section on stage with Huey's band Clover, and we're playing together for the first time, Huey and myself.
All right, so there was rivalry going on, but eventually it became a thing of joining forces, right? So when did that happen?
Yeah. I like to call it a rivalry. In fact, all these other bands were quietly getting signed from our area. Eddie Money, Pablo Cruz, Kraken, I could go on and on. So our little rivalry didn't mean a damn thing, if you know what I mean. I think the short story is Clover took off to England to supposedly make it big. They're going to make records and come back and conquer America. I ended up spending a little time down in L.A. working with Sly. Meanwhile, Huey and I kept corresponding the old-fashioned way, writing letters and talking on the phone. And one day out of the blue, he just calls me up. He said, Clover broke up. We're going to start a new band. I'm going to get you and Bill Gibson over to England. I said, send me a ticket. Let's go, man. So it couldn't have been more than 5 days later. He said, calling it off. I'm coming back to Marin County. Let's get a little something going there. And that literally was the catalyst for Huey Lewis and the News. I mean, Huey was cooking all this stuff up, there's no doubt. He was already starting to pick and choose guys he wanted, and I am sure he was thinking about it way before 1977 and 78. But this was his moment to do it, you know.
Right.
He shaved, he cut his hair, he put on a skinny tie, and he turned, he morphed from Hugh Craig to Huey Lewis in about a year.
When did the band come together, and did it you have one of those moments when everybody's playing and you kind of know this is kind of it?
Not really.
No.
We had this thing called the Monday Night Live Band, and we're kind of making demos and trying to write tunes, and so we're trying to get a band together, but we don't really know who's going to be in the band yet. I'd already thrown in my hat, let's face it. The drummer's working with another band. Our keyboard player's got a bit part in a movie up in Montana. So it's kind of all over the place. Meanwhile, everyone who's in Monday Night Live Band thinks they're going to be in the band. It would soon become Huey and the News. So we're quietly conspiring over a pint here and there in the clubs and thinking who's in and who's out. And it took a while, but we nailed it down to the six of us. We got a 3-record deal from Chrysalis Records, and we just wanted to pump this record out fast and furious. And Huey had kind of taken this cue off Stiff Records, Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe, Dave Edmunds, all these guys over in England. Just get in, get the record done, get it out there, move on to the next one. If it's good, and everyone's going to notice. Well, it sounded about this big, this little tiny record, and we're playing too fast, and it's got no fidelity, and we rethought the second one because we're running out of time. We needed a hit. Mm-hmm. America wasn't England, so.
And then you got a different producer, correct? Wasn't Mutt Lange the producer on that one?
No.
And the second one?
No, actually, second record we auditioned, for lack of a better term, about 5 or 6 producers whose names I forget or probably shouldn't talk about, but we didn't hire any of them. Luckily, one of the tunes that came in was written by Mutt Lange.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it
Yes,
was.
and
right.
we rearranged it and put our little Huey Lewis and the News thing on it that we were refining, and We Both Believe in Love became Do You Believe in Love, and we had a hit. We were off and running. So
Now you say you had a hit. Now, What does that feel like when you first hear it on the radio? Was that like, especially you've been doing this for some time. What was that like?
Go all the way back to my freshman year in Armio High School, which all I ever wanted to do was make records and have hits. Not in any egotistical way, but in an artistic way. It's what I always wanted. There was never a doubt in my mind, and that was it. KFRC picked it up, and I'm driving in my '68 Camaro over Wolf Grade, and I hear myself singing "Do You Believe in Love" tracked 8 times. There were no other singers on the chorus, and I just pulled over and turned it up and started laughing at it because it was so surreal, you know. Yeah, I've got $5 in my pocket and I'm almost out of gas, but I hear my voice on the radio. You know?
Now that was the change with the next record, right?
Well, one hit wasn't enough. It never is for a record label, and they'd paid for 3, so it was Feet to the Fire on our 3rd recording. You know, honestly, I'll have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure we produced our 2nd record. We were on our last record for Chrysalis, and we needed hits, and we needed, I mean, if you want to be in that club with Bruce Springsteen and Tina Turner and Blondie and Pat Benatar, you need a lot of hits, and the record's got to be good. So there's no other way to say it. We designed each tune as if it were a single, and we worked like crazy to make each song sound like something that you would dial up on the radio, and it would fit into what was going on for the time. So, you know, I think we did pretty good.
Yeah. So that album, Sports, went on to sell how many?
You tell me.
A few.
30 million?
Something like that. Yeah.
Worldwide, I think 30 million, maybe.
Yeah, and it became part of the soundtrack to what people of their lives. They think back on that time, and you think Huey Lewis in the News. You think of the Heart of Rock and Roll. You think of I Want a New Drug. You want that whole album, like you said, was just like a greatest hits album made as a new album.
Yeah. You know, I got a letter like 5 days ago from some gal who said, we changed her life with that record, and to this day she's playing it for her grandkids, and they want to know who the band is, and they're dancing around at 5 years old in the living room, wondering where this stuff comes from. So it was a lot of fun.
All right, we're gonna have some more from Johnny Colla right after this.
Excuse me, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's some graffiti on your wall.
Well, there it is. At least I can report it on the My Fairfield CA app.
Fairfield has an app?
Yeah, and it's actually easy to use. I just enter my information, take a photo, and hit submit.
Wow, that's really simple.
Just look up My Fairfield CA in the App Store, or you can use one of these. Next time you see an issue, just scan it and send it.
Thanks, I will. Get the My Fairfield CA app. Pass it on.
And we're back with more local legends with Johnny Colla. So Johnny, so you guys exploded then. In the mid '80s, you guys are everywhere, and then it only got bigger when you did a movie soundtrack. Tell us about that.
I don't even know how the offer came in, but somehow through Steven Spielberg's camp, they wanted a song for this thing, Back to the Future, and we'd never written for movies or television or anything like that. We were completely green, but we decided to take a swipe at it, and I was a little upset because our guitar, we had this rivalry thing going just like any other band, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. It was a songwriting war, but on good terms. Chris Hayes turned in the first demo, this thing called Power of Love. And it was okay, and we sent it down to Bob Zemeckis, I guess, who's directing the movie. And Bob said, it could be a little, I don't know, peppier. So that was a refusal, that's what that was. So he brought it back, and Huey told Chris, he says, why don't you and Colla go cut another demo, and just let him put his little thing on it. And I came up with a few bits that I thought were peppier. We sent it back down. They loved the tune, and we cut it, and the rest is history.
But so your audience has got bigger. So what was that like? And you went all over the world. So tell me about that. What was that like for this Houston City boy to be on these huge stages and have these audience singing your words that you came up with? What was that like?
Yeah, well, it's surreal. You can't believe you're in these places and doing all this stuff, and that it actually happened for me.
And you've collaborated with a lot of people. And actually talked about this, how you were on We Are the World with the biggest names, ever. These are legendary artists. And you guys, you're there with Spinal Tap.
Yes. Might as well have been. Yeah.
Oh, there were, so you had all these legendary people, Bruce Springsteen and Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones. And so what was that like to be a part of the biggest record of the 80s, really, right? The single of the 80s.
I suppose so, yeah. And all of this was happening at once, right? Power of Love, all the hits off Sports, We Are the World. Being in that room with all those folks was beyond my wildest dreams. I decided I was going to be, first of all, no one was allowed in the room where the artists were, not even Christy Brinkley. Get out of here. Not even Jane Fonda. She was out in the other room. So, but I was determined to be in there for as much of it as I possibly could. And to be honest, we were lucky because between the News and the Jacksons, we were really kind of wallpaper to fill out that big riser that you see there.
Right.
So we were the lucky ones. We were down there over to the right side of the picture. But still, I was there and I was part of the group, and I just kind of walked around in a daze and talked to a few people and made a few friends, Hall and Oates, John Oates and a few others, and Aykroyd. And that's all great. So now the thing breaks up, and they're going to do the individual vocal lines. They've got all the stars lined up. And I'm just kind of hoping nobody notices that little Johnny Colla isn't stuck in the side of the control room, just hoping nobody even looks at me. And sure enough, I got away with it. So I was one of maybe 5 or 6 guys in there, with Life magazine and Newsweek and a couple other tabloids from around the world. And I just kept my mouth shut and watched, and got to watch the whole thing come down.
That's amazing. And you've produced and played on albums by a lot of different people. I did not know that you sang backup on a couple of Heart tunes from that huge album they had. I didn't know that till actually last night, to be honest. So I was like,
better
Johnny
late than
sang
never.
on that? I did not know that. So,
Yeah.
so how did that come about?
I had a friend / producer, a guy named Ron Nevison, who fancied my voice. And I was one of his go-to guys. He'd decide what he was looking for in a song. He also, and this goes back to, another hat. He's not a musician by any stretch of the word. Some producers are producers, and they work bands in that capacity. Other producers are also musicians. And Ron leaned on lots of guys to come in and have ideas and develop ideas that fit the particular project. And I think he saw that in me. So, and I wasn't afraid to take the reins and come up with vocal arrangements and things like that. And I'll step back for a minute. I can remember, like I said, I'm more of a studio rat than a guy who likes to be on stage. I got to be honest. And any chance I could to get my 2 cents in the studio, I just love recording. So I'm in with Sly in San Francisco, and I said something about, the arrangement's wrong and in the vocals, something's not right there. And Sly says, John Colla, go and tell him what to sing. I said, okay. So I go in and I'm working with the vocalists and they sing this and that. And finally he presses the button. He says, just stay in there and sing it with them. So now there's 4 of us in there. So there is a chance, a long shot, that I am the only white vocalist on a Sly Stone record.
There's a distinction. Yes.
Maybe, possibly.
That's funny. And so you guys were, throughout the 80s, you had a number of hits. It kept growing. You had 4 come out, and tell me about that. Because at that time, too, you had converging the whole MTV thing, which made it even a bigger thing.
We stayed busy. Amazing timing as well. Let's face it. We had a pretty darn good-looking front man, and he just loved that lens, if you know what I mean. So we took to the videos really well, but we never took them too seriously. If you go back and look, we always made them sort of tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, 4 came out, and that was the first sort of chink in the armor, for lack of a better term. I don't know, I couldn't even tell you how well it did here, but it sold a lot of records here in America. But it was a bigger record worldwide. And because of the deal we had with Back to the Future, we were not allowed to release Power of Love on one of our own records in America. But we designed the deal so we could release it on our own record elsewhere in the world. So elsewhere in the world, 4 was our biggest album, and not Sports.
Really? I did not know that.
Weird, huh?
Huh, that's interesting. And you've always had you said you were like a studio rat. And so it's not surprising because on your solo albums, it jumped out at me that this is a guy who's kind of wanted to be a lead singer. Am I accurate in that, or?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So you kind of always had that. What stopped you? Were you a lead singer before in any of your bands before?
Yeah, I sang songs, live and recordings, but I don't think I came into my own voice until 10 years ago, 12 years ago. This happens. Matter of fact, I didn't even like the sound of my own voice before then. It was a little too clean and pure. Well, for lack of a better term, it was a backing vocalist voice. And I think slowly it's sort of put a little more muscle and something into it, a little more character.
So Weather, is that Huey Lewis and the News' swan song, you think, or is that going to be the last album for you guys?
It's looking more and more like that, right? It's a 7-song record. I think the spin the record label put on it, that we stopped recording because Huey couldn't sing anymore, that's more of a press fabrication that we had nothing to do with. There, I said it. So we just couldn't come up with enough songs. It was hard to come up with 9 or 10 tunes for Weather. But let's face it, people nowadays have a pretty darn short attention span.
This is true.
And these really don't mean much nowadays. I sent out about 200-300 CDs to my closest friends, and at least 50 of them came back at me and said, I don't have a CD player. But I have a feeling it'll be our last band effort, simply because Huey can't carry pitch. He can still hear to a certain degree, and I'm sure he sings in the shower and in the kitchen when he's cooking, but that probably took care of our recording career moving forward.
Speaking of moving forward, so in 2022, what's on tap for you? Actually, one thing I was going to ask you too about, we talked about Cottonmouth, and one thing that always impressed me about Tom Petty was this huge star, and then he later went on to went back to Mudcrutch and made some Mudcrutch albums, which I thought was really awesome. I go, who does that? I can't think of another example of an artist doing that. And so,
yeah, that's great.
Is there a Cottonmouth or Furlander album in the future, or is that too much to ask?
Who knows? Furlanders, no. Cottonmouth would be fun to play shows, but as far as cutting a record, I don't think so. It's so time consuming. I've got so many things lined up. Like I probably said somewhere along the line, when I got my first Sound on Sound tape recorder, I thought, there it is. Now I can record, but I didn't have any ideas. Didn't have anything to record. So I played around with harmonies and Paul McCartney songs and whatever's going on the radio. Now it's quite the opposite. I got this funky recording facility and all the ideas in the world, but no time to get it all done. It's very strange. I'm sort of the gatekeeper of Huey and the News's tape library, analog tape library. And part of our aftermath, if you want to call it that, is going back and digging through our archives and seeing what we've got there. I'm sure we've got 3 or 4 live performances we own from around the world that people would be interested in. We've got a lot of outtakes. I think Huey had an idea to put out a record called Greatest Misses.
Love it.
I'm not sure I should have given that one away. And I've got probably a couple different Johnny Colla projects just waiting to be recorded. I just can't find the time to do it.
Right. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for coming and speaking with us on Local Legends and sharing some of your incredible journey. And I hope your CD does well, whatever format, whatever platform it's in. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
And join us next time here on Local Legends.